This is Bam Pow Comic Hour with your hosts, Andrew Honor
and Chris Ramos.
And tonight we cover Deadpool and his early origins in the comic book industry. And so we wanted to do this in celebration of the Deadpool and Wolverine or Deadpool 3 movie coming out this July. And
is it just called Deadpool Wolverine?
Yeah, I don't know.
And.
You know,
I guess it's and.
It's and. I mean, I wouldn't, leave out Wolverine.
It'd be funny that Deadpool comes first there. So
right. Oh, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, or just Deadpool 3. However you want to seek it out. But instead of doing, the classic Wolverine, which we're big, huge fans of his, and you've got some personal history with them. We're like, hey, let's challenge ourselves. Let's read something we haven't read before because we're very well versed in Wolverine. Let's talk about Deadpool. Because he needs some love too, and being the star of his own movie and things like that.
And I don't know if the Deadpool movies have really helped with Deadpool the comic.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, if he's pushing some sales, that would help. But this edition was the Deadpool Classic was put together right after the first Deadpool movie.
Yeah.
Which was in 2016. So this came out 2017.
Right. A friend of mine had this as a trade paperback, and I remember he's like, oh, this is pretty cool, seeing the origins of Deadpool and seeing how far the character has come and his comic book history, and just seeing how he debuted in New Mutants number 98 in 1991 to today. Like how much that character has grown from that, or where were some of those early concepts that Ryan Reynolds was taking from.
And I remember that comic coming out.
Oh yes, take us back. Take us back.
I remember 1991. But the popularity of this, I think, was riding on Cable at the time. Because Cable
was
as a character just sort of hit the scene, and I think he pushed all the buttons, checked all the boxes of like a comic book character at that time.
Sure.
He was like somewhat telekinetic, and then telekinesis was like a huge kind of cool thing at the time.
Time travel.
Yep. He was time traveler. He was like mysterious, like somewhat related, and people are like,
Jean
how
Grey,
are you related? And so every time something or someone debuted, you're always like, who's your family tree? It was like a really big deal to be like, who made you? Where are you from?
And now he just appeared, or he was in the X-Men animated series.
Yes, and same idea.
He was in 97 just recently. So
Cable is just a really cool character, and he was in the New Mutants run, and then I want to say I didn't
New Mutants to the X-Force kind of.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't look this up, but I want to say this was one of the final issues before it then was rebranded as X-Force.
Right, because by that with this lineup, I mean, we have we have Cable,
Cannonball,
Sunspot, Boom Boom, I think is still.
Oh yeah, Boom Boom, I think.
Some of the more aggressive ones.
And then Domino made it.
Yeah, Domino, yeah.
I always thought she was a cool character.
She is still cool. Cannonball, man, I just got done reading the first two omnibuses and the recent, finished the second one like a couple months ago, and I'm like, how does New Mutants get to here? Like, he's the only original member on the team.
Well, and the other cool part too is this was one of the first instances where you had a team that was like kids, right? And like Cable was like training them. He's like, you're going to be an actual team.
And that's kind of funny you say that.
And then they changed it into X-Force. So people were like, oh my gosh, they grew up. It's
that's how they seen it.
Yeah. It was like a sidekicks became an actual team. And then they put the X in it. So you're like, X-Men, X-Force, X Factor. There was so many at that time.
Right. All the spin-offs.
Yeah. And it was working, and it was popular, and man, it was a good time to be reading all things Marvel.
Yeah. And like you said, Cable coming on to be the mentor of the team is just for me as a new reader to this, I seen Professor X, he was trying to be the leader, and then he's like, I gotta go into space and die for a little bit. Then Magneto comes in. He's trying to be the stern parent. So seeing how far this team has come, how the changes, I'm kind of intrigued now to see where he got aggressive and edgy.
Well, it was almost like all of the kids wanted to be superheroes, and
right.
all of the
they
adults were like broken. So
whoa,
it was like, we'll trade you, don't worry. And all the kids are like, what's happening here? So
right, yeah, just real life hit him hard.
So Deadpool coming in again, I think, with Rob Liefeld as the artist. I mean, he was hitting his high mark too.
Sure. I mean, and he's one of the originators to Image Comics, and so this is kind of like his origins of coming back, starting at Marvel Comics with the rest of his era of team with Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, and things
Jim
like
Lee
that. Jim Lee, Jim Lee was going hot on X-Men at the time, and so seeing like what he was doing alongside his peers, like we talked earlier about, the Jim Lee X-Men run.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he was doing. And so just to see like how he flushes out, his art's actually pretty decent. You can't really judge Rob Liefeld on Captain America.
Yeah.
Like if you look at that compared to this, you're like, wow, how did we get there?
I mean,
but he's got some good designs here.
When I was a kid reading this, I mean, this was 91. All right, so I was 12.
Young 12.
So perfect time to read it, right? When you were at that time, it was great. It was just like, it was action, it was moving, it was like characters you cared about.
Yep.
And now looking back on it, it's like the only thing that comes to mind for me is like they were pumping these out like on time.
Yeah.
Like
these were a monthly, I think.
And it was like, hey, that's hard to do. And so like if you need to like fly through this just to get your deadlines and keep that flow going,
sure,
that was kind of worth it too,
Absolutely.
And they were really, really pushing these out and just coming up with characters every week. They're just coming up with story every week. It's a lot.
Yeah. And just to see like where Deadpool is created by both Rob Liefeld, is at least his character design, and then Fabian Nicieza is his like co-creator. So he was doing all the writing at the time. So just to see like just some of those early concepts of they created him as to be like a villainous kind of mercenary at the time, kind of like the antagonist, he'll be the antagonist to the Cable. Just to kind of give him some rivalry and
someone that was just to
kick him in the side a little bit.
Yeah. Like he wasn't a mercenary at the time.
Not fully.
Yeah, he was actually.
Yeah, he was kind of a mercenary.
He was hired. Okay.
Yeah, he's still hired by Mr. Talivar to come kill Cable, as one always does. And so you're like, oh, okay. But he still doesn't, he's starting to develop a dialogue for him. But he's really like more straightforward, a little more edgier. I noticed that he has a lot of pockets on his belt, so but he still has the two swords. He has a gun, and that was the thing at that time. It was just like, we're gonna load these people up with as many weapons as we could.
Yes, it was like the epitome of like doing drawings of your own and like, I'm gonna put a knife here and I'm put a sword
right. Yes,
anywhere they felt like
the elbows and shoulder pads. And that's the running joke.
It's like everyone's gonna have a knife strapped to their shin like all the time.
Oh, in this panel he's got like a belt on his bicep almost. Yeah, you could use that.
Pockets
protect you
everywhere, man.
Pockets everywhere. So they're starting to get some back and forth dialogue. Just like, Deadpool, he can take a hit just as well as Cable and really toe to toe with him. And so you're like, oh, this character's got some stuff, he's got some real gravitas for him. And they're starting to build this like comical dialogue, but really haven't really scratched the surface to what we know today. Like they're still developing that.
Yeah, like he was snarky, right? He was
just snarky. I like
just a little. He threw
a little
it back
tip that
a little bit, but
right.
He wasn't constant. And you had mentioned that he was sort of modeled around Spider-Man a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We were looking at some of the notes that we were doing research on.
I mean, at this time, Spider-Man was at his peak of like really constant chatter. If you look at when Spider-Man was fighting.
So the quote we found was like, the simplicity of the mask was my absolute jealousy over Spider-Man. The fact that both my buddies, Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane, would tell me, I love drawing Spider-Man. You do an oval and 2 big eyes. You're in, you're out. The Spider-Man I grew up with make fun of you or punch you in the face, make small cracks. Just kind of like that witty banter. That was the entire intent of Deadpool. I specifically told Marvel he's Spider-Man except with guns and swords. The ideal was he's just crazy. And so we kind of were going through some of like the resemblances or the inspiration for him. It was like Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke from the Teen Titans, Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, and a little bit of Wolverine, and just for flavor. But it was just like, oh, I can definitely see all this. And just to see like that melting pot of ideas just come together for this crazy character.
Well, and I can see too, because again, in that era of comics, it was like whoever you set up as your quote unquote hero of the story, right? Because there was always someone that was like top dog in the story, and they'd put him on the cover. And Marvel and DC both, I mean, they just, think of Superman.
Sure.
So when he's not like heroically posed on a cover, if Superman's like knocked out and someone's standing over him, you're like, who is that?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
That definitely brings more attention.
Yeah. So same more idea importance. With Deadpool. Deadpool bursts into the scene his very first appearance.
Absolutely.
And he starts fighting Cable, which at the time Cable was top dog.
Yeah.
And got him knocked down and got him actually, stabbed and stuff. So you're like, wow. I mean, he got the jump on Cable. So really good entrance. I mean, as far as a first appearance, it's memorable.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up one of the panels, and he goes, I've always wanted the chance to rehabilitate myself, somewhere nice. How about a prison in the Bahamas? And you're like, okay, how about we send you back to Tolliver and let him deal with you? From what I remember about Tolliver, he doesn't take too kindly to failures, does he? And so they're like making fun of Deadpool as he makes fun of himself. And
you could see that Deadpool was reckless and like he didn't really care, but at that time, and I was trying to see, I think somewhere in between here, because remember, this is a collection of different stories through. I mean, there's big jumps in here,
right?
So somewhere in there, they decided to really ramp up his healing factor, because in his first appearance, they don't
you don't see his underneath his mask. He is just a good fighter.
Yeah, and he's wrapped with bandages at the end. So later on in Deadpool stories, they don't even do that.
Sure. So who was the one that say, oh, he's got all the
he's got one of the strongest.
Yeah, he survived cancer through.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times he's shot or stabbed.
Right.
It's like he's gonna pull through kind of thing.
Absolutely. And so we start off with his New Mutant appearance by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. And then the next story is Deadpool, The Circle Chase by Fabian Nicieza. And then Joe Mandarina, I want to say his name, with the inkers Mark Farmer and Harry Calendiro. Some of those 90s, inkers and team. Joe, or they kind of call him Joe Mad, is kind of like one of the abbreviations I've heard for his name. And he actually does a solid job with what he's given, I think. Just a different style, and just I think it kind of captures like that feeling of the 90s.
Yeah, and then they have it on the cover, Deadpool #1. It says The Circle Chase, a survivor of Weapon X. So that's really when they started leaning into the idea that Weapon X was this clandestine operation that built
Wolverine,
built mutants, built superpowered people, built Wolverine, some of the other famous Weapon X.
Captain America was like prototype.
Yep, and obviously Deadpool, and then also, who am I thinking of?
There was Kane. There was Omega Red.
Lady
Deathstrike.
So there were a lot of them.
Sabretooth. And That's the ones I remember. But there's, but like, even in that lore, they just keep adding. Like Weapon X just kept going and going, and just new people took it over, or like, hey, the evil doctor didn't die.
Well,
or he cloned himself, so he made more weapons.
Yeah, at this time they were still saying Weapon X, and then later on, they identified Weapon X as Wolverine was Weapon X, which is Weapon 10.
Right.
So then you're like, oh gosh, that's
we
great.
could go back. Yeah, we can go back. We can go further.
Someone really thought it through.
Right. And I'm like, that's actually a pretty clever like writing device. Of like, hey, we can go back, we can go forth, we can add to it. That was just a great writing moment of like, wow, okay.
So one thing I noticed in this Deadpool #1, the Circle Chase.
Yeah.
Obviously Rob Liefeld's not drawing it.
Nope.
But they started saying Marvel's Merc with a mouth. So it's like,
so they started identifying that phrase.
Yeah. Yep, it's his thing, and he's showing a lot more like martial arts. Like he's doing a lot more like actual legit poses and moves, and you do get that Spider-Man reference a little bit where he's jumping and he's got his one leg tucked in, one leg kicked out, and all that stuff.
Oh, right.
But
like just a different posing.
Yeah, it's kind of like pulling in his own style.
Sure.
Which is just like he's just really wily. He's just everywhere, right? And he's talking the whole time, so that just becomes more of that.
Right. And he's starting to develop some dialogue. Like, guess not, it's just impossible to find good conversation in this town. And just like it does like it's just like a warehouse just wiped out. And if I ever run one more Brady Bunch group of Mercs while I'm here, I'm just about to cut my own ears off for having heard of the name Talibar. He was the best paying arms dealer, money laundering, bike stealing, puppy crushing boss I've ever had. But ever since he died, the Merc business sure has taken Greg Lewigans, like Greg Lewigans, and it was just like, okay, we're starting to develop some funny, quirky dialogue where he can jib and jab a little bit there, and he's like, whatever happened to honor among thieves? You say that you're Deadpool, like you have about as much honor as anybody, like nobody. He doesn't get too much stock in the game.
Well, I like too, they start introducing the Marvel universe as a whole. Like now everyone knows Deadpool, so it's becoming way more popular.
Right. Or he ran into like Wolverine. Oh, I ran into you about 10 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. And you're like, oh, okay. So that's an easy way for him to like fill in.
To say he's been around.
Mm-hmm.
And these stories, I think are, I don't know, they're very, like you had said, very straightforward. There's not really that many deep moments. It's just real surface level writing, real surface level action. Deadpool's got some moments, but at the same time, it's very much like just showing him and how he can fight. It's not like they're developing too much of his story.
We're not going too far in quite yet. They're starting to introduce like, hey, I think Kane comes in and he goes, hey, I was also part of Weapon X. I don't want to deal with Deadpool. Deadpool is dead. It's bad news. We like he had like a difficult time on a job or something like that. And then we come to find out reading this like collection that Black Tom Cassidy and Juggernaut were like his two big like villains.
Yeah, and they were like,
if you want to call
two peas in a pod at the time too.
Right, because they're like best of friends.
Yeah, they were buddies, which was kind of a cool pair up that Juggernaut actually had a friend to begin with. And Black Tom always had that like little cane, remember? He always used to hop around with like a little cane.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
He was like dressed like
He was a very, very minor X-Men villain.
Yeah. they tried to beat him up as much.
But he was Banshee's brother, I believe.
Oh.
That's what, yeah, I think he was his brother or his cousin or something like that. I think it was his brother. And so that's why he, there's a later story in this collection where Banshee's like, I have to save Black Tom. Why do you got to say Black Tom? Because he's family. I don't care what he's done. I need to redeem him.
But I don't remember if he was.
Yeah, like close. A relation or something like that.
Something in there.
But that's where like his callback is to there. So that kind of draws in other X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And to like, oh, hey, Deadpool's also a mutant.
It was the constant crossovers. It
right.
was the constant family tree,
Exactly.
like
And if you read this and you know nothing about X-Men, I don't know if you know that Deadpool's a mutant necessarily because he appeared in New Mutants, but it's not like he's Wolverine and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really pick up on some of that too.
I guess not until like the healing factor becomes a thing and like he's experimented on and whatnot.
I do think it's cool though. Like if you look at the movies and you compare it to this classic edition, you can tell they didn't like drastically change the character.
No.
Some other characters have really changed, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, for the most part, when people said that Ryan Reynolds' costume was really
accurate,
yeah, like it was. I mean, it was.
Right?
If you look at it to the comics, it really stayed to it, which is great.
And so, in the early comics, he had a sidekick called Weasel. It was his like sidekick that knew he knew all the smarts, all the ins and outs. He helped get Deadpool to where he is because Deadpool has all the wits, but none of the brains of the operation. So he relies on his sidekick Weasel to help him out.
You mostly tell Deadpool how you want things to turn out, and then from that point to the end, it's just kind of anarchy. And,
absolutely.
He does complete his missions, but a really wacky
how he gets them done is another.
It's a really wacky road to get there.
Absolutely, and that's what makes that's the appeal of Deadpool, right? Is that chaotic mercenary, and just that lightheartedness. He also he would go on some of his like love interest for like Domino. Domino was a big love interest for him, and then we kind of see that Siren, Banshee's daughter, like they start hitting it off, and eventually as one series gets done, they continue where they left off in another. It was like, oh, you're actually trying to make this a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Not just like the damsel of the week. All right, I appreciate that.
You think of the gaps that were happening, and it was like, all right, he really is trying to make, I don't know, a recurring appearance a little bit. But not to the point where it's taking over his book. That's, a lot of these, you get the idea that it's very much his book, which I do like.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't like pull away.
Right.
I think in these early days, like if you would have like had him like join X-Force right off the bat or stay with New Mutants or whatnot, I could totally see pulling it from it, and he wouldn't get the same attention that he does now. And then not till later when you do get that big run with Cable Deadpool, that you were talking about, we talked about in our pre-show, like you don't appreciate that as much until, you establish Deadpool as somebody.
And at a lot of this writing in even that era, I think they were really graying the lines of what people considered a anti-hero,
right?
Like
Punisher's a dude.
yeah. I mean, and Deadpool, same idea,
right?
mean, he really had a singular purpose, and he's legit killing people.
The Merc with the mouth,
and it's like, where do you start drawing the line? Where you start thinking, all right, he's actually doing some good, but it's like actually he's like killing everyone, but it's like, oh, he's actually doing some good while he's there.
He's like, he killed like the whole entire army, but he finished the job.
I think that was he
saved the girl.
Draw to a lot of people too, obviously. Just see where it was going.
Oh, absolutely.
And I do like that they kept his origin mysterious enough that people kept coming back to try to figure it out.
Absolutely, because it's not cookie cutter. There is some layers to him that like what was his life like before he became Deadpool? What was Wade Wilson up to? What kind of guy was he? Oh, he talks about he's a cancer survivor. Well, that's weird. How is he a survivor? Because, there's no cure for cancer. Well, he was heavily experimented on, and there's a reason why he keeps a mask over his face. On why he keeps it that way. And when he does take it off, that's a very dramatic moment that the writers of Deadpool have to put special care into when they want to reveal that or when they want to use that for like their plot device.
And in that aspect, he's a lot like Wolverine, where they just kept hinting at things, but they never actually revealed anything.
No.
And a lot of
times, that's probably the fun of writing.
Yeah. And the reveal was like just actually bringing in more questions. So it wasn't really much of anything there.
Right. Absolutely. And we also get to see, that healing factor play a big part. And then we also get to see, if you are a fan of the movies, we get to see Vanessa. Vanessa's very different than
she's not just a girl.
Yeah, than the movies. She's like, well, she has got like a pale blue skin, and she has white hair with like red highlights, and then she has black eyes with red like pupils, and her power is that she absorbs like she's called Copycat, and I think she can absorb mutants' powers just from like touching them or very close proximity.
Yeah, she had definitely some of that. Who was that from the? Oh, now I don't remember.
There's like more. No, not Mystique. More. Mimic.
Either Mimic or one of the other Morlocks.
Oh,
where he didn't steal people's powers.
No, that was like, Leech just stole their powers. Yeah.
Or just subdued them or something like.
Right.
But yeah, she's kind of a surprise if you're thinking that you're going to go into reading this from the movie.
Absolutely.
I don't remember her as a character.
And it could be more like she might have popped up more in like the New Mutants or X-Force run. That could have happened
here and there.
Because like in like the conversations she has with like Deadpool, why she like low key hates him, or he low key like hates her, is because she like spent like 3 months or something undercover as Domino, like replacing her almost to the effect. And he's like, what the heck? You were like copying, my love interest at the time, but I found out it was you. You're like an ex-girlfriend that just doesn't go away. Again, but I really
Marvel
like you.
twists.
But I really like you. And there's something between us. They'd still find moments to care for each other, but they're like frenemies. They're like, I don't know. I can't really move because you have bad habits and I have bad habits. Maybe we'll come together. But it's still cool to see like where she started from too. Mm-hmm. Her portrayal in the movie is still great, but nowhere near to what this is. But it would also be hard to capture this on the screen too.
Yeah, and I think most of the characters, it was funny because when I was reading through this, I was thinking of the movie also. And I was like, gosh, most of these characters would be kind of hard to put on the screen.
Right.
I mean, Banshee, I think there's a purpose they just left him off. It's just, he just screamed all the time. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't had a live action Banshee to my knowledge yet. Or there might have been maybe a side character, if that. I think just in the X-Men like animated series, I remember that. Him being there.
Some of those characters at the time were pretty strong, like players, but also not like A-list heroes, right?
Yeah.
So for them to appear in a Deadpool comic like this makes sense.
Sure.
People knew who they were, but it was also just sort of a, again, not really a sidekick, but just sort of a, hey, there's also these other heroes.
Right. It connects them back to the X-Men.
Yeah.
universe.
And they do things with the X-Men, but they're also just sort of running around doing their own stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, one comic he's trying to the whole like goal of I think the Circle Chase is for him to find this weapon of power that this guy Tolliver he's got stolen away. It's like supposed to be worth so much money. He gets hired for it, and he goes off and tries to fulfill that. Cool. All right, and then Mark Waid does the second story, and it's interesting to see the dynamic styles change between the two writers, even though you wouldn't think, oh, it's the same. Almost. I would say when Mark Waid came on, so we were looking this up. He starts comics with DC in 87, comes to Age of Apocalypse as his first Marvel story. Then before and then this is after his Flash run. He comes in before he does Captain America. Mark Waid does Captain America. This must have happened that in between period.
Yeah, somewhere in that pocket. I think they were still testing him on other characters, and Deadpool at the time was probably still just a character you can jump into and I don't know, write a few issues here.
Right. And he might have been just a fill-in writer just to, again, test it out, fill it in. But wow, in this collection, he does a stellar job with Deadpool. And even though he's not doing anything like above and beyond what some of his other cohorts are doing in this collection, like he's really giving just good storytelling. And that's what Mark Waid does. He just gives good storytelling to characters, makes you care about them and their cast of like supporting cast, and just a great interesting story that you can follow.
I think he also brought like a seriousness back to the character.
Yes.
I think the character was starting to become like
trying to find a purpose.
Yeah. Well, and slapstick.
Yes.
In a way that, people were just waiting for him to stab and shoot people.
Right.
And you have to like still step back and say this could be a serious character. And I think that happens with a lot of superheroes and a lot of comics for sure, that after a while, you lose track that the character can be a actual character. Like think back to like even in DC Comics, Flash or Plastic Man or whatever. There's plenty of goofy ones out there, but a well-written story kind of makes you think, wow, that character's really going through something, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in Marvel it would be like, some of the X-Men where you just see them as, goofy kids, but then you realize that there's a huge backstory that's very serious too.
Absolutely. And so just some of the pencilers and just some of the people that worked on it was Ian Churchill. Lee Weeks is a really big one that's still really popular today, and Ken Lashley. And then like Bob McLeod worked on this. Or not Bob McLeod. Yeah, Bob McLeod. Yeah, probably that's how you sounded. We're getting there. And Jason Miner, and just a couple other inkers that are still known today. But like Lee Weeks is still huge, and Ken Lashley is still huge in the industry today. And obviously Mark Waid's like on top of he's one of the most popular comic writers to date. So just seeing like their early work and just seeing where they were cutting their teeth is really interesting to see. Like dual of like a short 4-issue like Deadpool run.
And did you
it's called Deadpool Sins of the Past.
Yeah, they were putting in like Deadpool created by Rob Liefeld, and like they started putting that in more places.
Oh, absolutely, because they were smart. They were like, hey, we gotta push that. But if there's like one issue called Looks with Kill, and it starts with oh, come on, you should see the other guy, and it's Deadpool with his mask off, and it's just scarred. It's like pink, and he's just scarred. You can't tell any of his facial features except his eyes and his mouth. That's it.
That page there reminded me very much of Todd McFarlane.
Oh, it looks. Oh, yeah, I can see that.
That was a McFarlane drawing like a Spawn.
Right.
That's totally a Spawn drawing.
Right. Kind of influenced by that storytelling.
And they all worked with each other. They were all around each other. And just like the old Marvel bullpen, they were all, feeding each other ideas.
Yeah. I do like the issue, or at least this appearance of Juggernaut. Like the last, the other run before it was cool. They had some good Juggernaut depictions, but this was you could tell the size of Juggernaut and the weight that he has behind him.
No way to stop him.
And the unstoppable Juggernaut. Well, we got to portray that. And it's wow. Okay.
And just how
he's larger than life.
Deadpool is even to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the pain that, Black Tom is still going through. Really building out this rigidity, bar scene, kind of sketchy. They're not slumming it, but again, Deadpool coming in, just say, Dump, are you nuts? Asked and answered. A nation full of Chuck E. Cheeses and fern bars to choose from, and you push heads nuke the only decent watering hole east of the Panhandle, and just kind of there's the other funny part. You have any idea how hard it is to find a joint that'll serve a guy in a mask and a bandolier? They won't even let me into a Taco Bell. And I'm like, okay, that's good. And that's Mark Waid. Mark Waid's not known for his silly comical parts, but you've probably seen what the last two or the last issues of Deadpool, the runs of that, seeing what seen what Fabian was doing, and he's like, "Oh, I can do that. Let's amp it up a little bit." Put some pop culture like drop and some nods to that. That's funny, and I wonder if that just kind of influenced the people that come after that.
Well, and I think it became really well thought of banter, really well, good witty banter.
Yes,
instead of just being like degrading and just picking on, like
right. And that's the Spider-Man influence.
Yeah, he was just doing like all these quips before and just like really kind of again snarky, but I think now he's really like showing people that he can think faster than them, and that was what made him a good fighter, is that he was thinking ahead.
Sure.
He does have a moment too in these, and I thought that was a good Mark Waid thing where he forced himself to heal it faster.
Yes, because he's seeing that his healing factor can't keep up.
Yeah, so he's pushing his healing factor, which was like, oh, so you have like more control over your healing factor than maybe others do, right?
And maybe that was just a writing choice that he did,
maybe
because
he was trying to do that.
Right. Because, we don't know him, I guess, as somebody who has to pause to heal. Like, he just heals really fast. I guess in the movies, like, there are parts where he heals faster than others.
Yeah. But he is not like this one, he had his hand cut off. So then he just like sort of concentrated and he just forced his hand to grow back, which is like, oh, well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And then Black Tom puts his hand on.
Yes.
You have my hand. It's like what the heck?
In the package.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was great. The only way I can recover this is if I have Deadpool cells. Well, you have my hand, but.
Well, again, this is like 250 pages, the whole Deadpool Classic run. And it was like very much Black Tom and Juggernaut. It was like across all these series. I guess they just
I do like that it's a connecting story that you can follow instead of just one off and one off and one off. Because sometimes if you have too many one off stories that are just the villain of the week style, it's not as strong.
Well, they just weren't using them other places, maybe. So they're like, hey, these are going to be Deadpool's things. Yeah, this is his rogues gallery.
Absolutely. Like the Luck of the Irish issue, I love when Lee Weeks comes on, and he's got a different style too, and just really kind of, it's not a hyper style, but it's kind of laid back, some muted colors, and when it's just him and Siren, they still have like a good, like, here's an art style for this 4-issue run. Let's keep like a style choice, but you guys can kind of still use your own styles and colorists and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, and still so much fun. I love the Mark Waid one. I'm sorry, but I really like this Mark Waid run. Like, not that the original like Fabian Nicieza run was not bad. This was just easier to follow.
Well, and this one paid attention to the other characters in the book.
Yes, absolutely. And they weren't so much like throwaway.
Right. Yeah. Instead of just making it a push through the pages. Yeah. The other really cool thing, I think, was even though it jumped from one artist to the next, it wasn't really surprising in the storyline. It was just sort of like,
it's very cohesive.
Yeah, like
good
you were
pacing.
looking at it in a different lens.
Yeah.
Some comics you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even finish. Like, what's happening here?
Absolutely.
So they all worked well together. I think they all had a good synergy at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes a good team too, especially like if you're trying a new project or a fairly new character out, you want to have that. What was it? One of your scenes where they light Juggernaut on fire?
Yeah, I really like that.
I've never seen that before, so I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I haven't seen that.
Poured lava on him, and he just kept going.
Yeah.
And he was just really hot, so it was just like that was perfect. Yeah, I thought it was a really well done.
Right. I don't know if they've did it ever since then, or why don't they use that more? But I was like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." All right. Like Juggernaut on fire, he just keeps going. Okay. But super cool story from this team. That was super cool. And then
I do like that Juggernaut was saying that he needs to help heal Black Tom. He needs healing, right? So Deadpool is like, well, I can't help you, and he goes, well, I'm going to bring you back. He needs something special. I'm going to bring you back. And Deadpool's like, how about instead he takes 2 Wolverines and calls me in the morning?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's perfect. So it's like Wolverine and Deadpool have always been together.
Right.
They've always been rivals.
Absolutely.
They've been part of Weapon X together. they've always sort of had these
This
fun
comical,
cameos.
yeah,
So it's a
rivalry.
perfect back and forth. I think this movie is really going to help kind of show that.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point because we had Cable and Deadpool, and now this will be Wolverine and Deadpool. So that'll just amp it up,
Yeah, they're getting
turn it to 11.
All his pairs.
That's good. And then we end this collection, the Deadpool Classic Volume 1 collection, with the Deadpool by Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness.
There's Ed.
Yeah. How would you describe Ed McGuinness?
Well, I know you don't like Ed McGuinness.
I am not the hugest fan of Ed McGuinness, but actually for this last run, it fits the tone.
That's true. So
like I can't stand him on Superman and Batman. Like they're so blocky.
Well,
Hulk he's good on. He can be good on Hulk.
That's true. Because he just draws everyone so chunky.
Yes.
It's just so rounded, so chunky. And I think the funny thing is that's his pencils, right? But then for some reason they pair up the colors.
Yeah, Ed McGuinness, Nathan. And
they
normally
they color it in very, very like
Sinkers, yeah.
I don't want to say juvenile, but they just color it in so goofy, right?
Yes.
So he already has kind of a let's say half goofy style, and then they color it in like it's a coloring book,
Yeah,
that's they make it like really simple, and I don't know, it just makes his drawings.
And maybe it was like the tone they were trying to go for.
It's just way exaggerated. I mean,
sure,
people's hands and arms and
right. This is the most cartoony of the styles we've seen.
Right in this book, it's
if that's a word, cartoony, but it's very. It could have some like manga inspiration to it.
I did like his
anime inspiration.
Yeah,
I would say
I could see that.
Yeah,
the way that he exaggerates,
or at least with this team that he has on this book right now.
And here's the thing too, though, to do drawings. You have to know how you can exaggerate.
Sure.
So he does exaggerate in some of the right ways.
Yeah. But I mean, look at Rob Liefeld. He hates strong feet. He loves big shoulders.
But like his Sasquatch is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good style choice. And, that's why he really wanted to work on the Hulk. When he would go to do World War Hulk, and he would have his own like storylines for that, or Red Hulk, he was big on that storyline.
Well, it's because the Hulk and Juggernaut and things like that. I mean, he can draw them large and weirdo
he has more
out.
Because freedom with it.
They're obviously more than human and not
right.
Human, right?
That's fair.
But when he draws like people and they have this tiny head and like size.
Sure. And I mean, you look at Deadpool, like he's very much more muscular and things like that. But I will say
with like giant boots all the time.
Yeah, he's got a really huge gun on his back for some reason that he didn't have before. Yeah, instead of swords, he's like, oh, I just have a big gun. But what I do like about this team that put together this book is that we kind of leaned into some of the early beginnings of quippiness, and we just turn it to 100.
Yes.
We turn it to 11.
They just kept saying, how far can we go?
Oh, absolutely. We went full. We went full, like, what was it? More humid than a church pew on Sunday, and quiet, so deathly quiet. Duh, it's narration, you ignorant simp. A literary device that allows one to establish tone, explicit information, and in a pinch, that's a lively way to distract a pack of phoebes like yourselves. And I'm like, oh my God, as a fringe benefit, it gives me something to listen to besides you are blood-choked, gurgling icky. As soon as it begins, the hunt has ended. Such is the way of the jungle. And he just keeps going. So you Joe Kelly starts to use this like fourth wall narration of Deadpool kind of explaining his own journey.
And he does do a lot of that little like data dump every once in a while.
Yeah, like the exposition dump.
Yep. And I think it does pull the story in, but at the same time, you have to like remember that I think Deadpool was really up against some other big, well-selling titles, and he was holding his own pretty much, which is something that's
like people could pick him out and say, yeah, that's Deadpool.
Yeah, or they're like, I'm looking for a certain type of comic, and Deadpool's fitting the bill, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
they knew what to expect. It's kind of like, again, going back to Spider-Man, Spider-Man from the very beginning, that's what we saw from our first episode.
Hey.
Amazing Spider-Man. We talked about just how serious he was right away. Like people think, oh, he's just goofy, kid, teenager, but it's like he was a tragic character.
Absolutely. He was in it for the money.
Yeah.
At the start. Yeah.
Constant tragedy.
He was always taking care of Aunt May. Is Aunt May this and that?
Constant stress. Constant.
Yeah. He stresses me out thinking about how stressed he is.
And it's just like, same with Deadpool. You just think he's just goofy and all that. But then this issue was like, okay, it tied it in that he's legit an anti-hero now.
Yes.
Like he wants to do some heroic things, but he also doesn't let anyone push him around.
Right. Absolutely. He wants to hold his own. I agree with that. And this kind of sets him up to where he could do his own adventures, his own style. He's not so much tied to the X-Men or the X-Men universe. He can kind of go on his own adventures and be silly. Just do things like you said. Why settle for a cut for you Lollipop Guild escapee when you can have the whole worthless wad? Next time a client stiffs me a patch, I'm taking a cut from somewhere below your waist. Capiche? I'm like, oh my God.
And then
the Lollipop Guild, get out of here.
And then he teleports.
Then he has a teleporting device that he's like, oh, I gotta get enough power to juice up to teleport. And he's like, oh, I don't have enough to go to my next jump, so he has to find like powers. So he steals it from a guy in like a power suit.
Yeah,
and he rips his like mask on. He's like, oh, this is enough juice. Hey, you're running off of plasma energy. Yep, that can plug in. And he teleports with the guy's mask. I'm like, what just happened? Then he's at the bar, like telling drinks, and he's like, what kind of world is where arrogant dolphin hating hippie kicking mercs can't enjoy a score on a job well done? And I'm like, dolphins, okay. And he's just kind of, they're putting so much, there's more attention to the dialogue.
Yeah.
Than there was maybe previously, where they were trying some things out and just trying to find what sticks.
Well, like purposefully putting together a day in the life of Deadpool.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to describe Joe Kelly. Yeah.
And just like what is he doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
In between the panels, and they filled it in for you so that you could still see it isn't just an act when he puts his suit on.
Right.
It's like, it's him. That's him all the time. Him through and through.
Yeah.
He's something wrong with him, but at the same time,
Right.
he also knows he's a little untouchable.
Right. And then one of the other cool, like we'll say funny side characters that comes in during this run of Joe Kelly is Blind Al. Or Alfred, or it's the blind lady from the movie that he's kind of like, that he stays with. It's like his cool like grandma that he stays with, and her power was she has mutant X-ray vision, and so I was like, oh wow, okay, so she legit had a power at one point, but we kind of threw that away. So now she's just like a cool, and she can like jab like Deadpool and really like wake him out of like, he's kind of trying to be sad and depressed. He's like, no, you gotta get up.
And I like his little like his place he stays at just has a bunch of Deadpool costumes just
I didn't see
hanging
that.
up there.
Right, yeah, I see that now.
It's just this little, that's all he has. It's, the whole room is empty. He just has Deadpool costumes.
Right.
It's just all he wears.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, Blind Al is just the best. And it's kind of cool to see, what liberties the movies took, what did they still keep out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of fun when you do those adaptations, but yet, the whole purpose of some of these movies is to go get you back in the comics.
Yep.
So that was kind of cool to see that character. He fights Sasquatch in this, and they kind of like are frenemies. It's like, hey, come on, we have this past with like Weapon X and things like that, and or just with his Hulk ties and things like that. Department K for like Alpha Flight. That's your deep cut for the day. Go look that up. But he's like a Sasquatch. He's essentially a Sasquatch. So he kind of and I think he was just fun to draw too. Just because like Ed McGuinness can just do whatever he wants with that, as we kind of mentioned.
And that's the other thing. At least all of his characters are unique, and you can tell the difference from one to the next.
That's true, because there's other artists where you can.
He does put time and effort into an actual like legit look for each one.
Yeah, so that was kind of a cool, like fun, lighthearted story too. So I think we experienced in this Deadpool Classic Collection that there's like 3 different kinds where they're figuring out, yes, he's a mercenary, look quippy. Then we had mostly mercenary. We were starting to pick up on the dialogue, and then Mark Waid kind of did a good balance of the two, of just general good story, really developing some of his characters, some of his backstory. And then we got to Joe Kelly, and he kind of brought all the pieces together and took it into probably the Deadpool we know today as like a very quippy, lighthearted, but action-packed hero.
Well, yeah, and this came out a year after the movie. So I think they wanted to do like a primer for everyone. Like, hey, so they ended it. Yeah, they ended it on, this is the Deadpool you saw in the movie.
Right. And there's probably why this is like the first volume of 6. So that was, we only wanted to cover the first part, but there is like, when I looked it up, there's like 6 different omnibuses for Deadpool. Everything from Deadpool and Cable to the Deadpool Classic, like the whole run, to Deadpool Max, where it's like it's like rated.
The Uncanny X-Force one is good. That's a good one.
Yep, that's where he's featured in with like when Wolverine and
like Archangel. And
like there's like this gray and purple black tones to it. That's a really cool like recent run.
Him on a team is actually a lot of fun.
Yes.
So if you see a story where he's like part of a team, it's actually pretty funny. He adds a dynamic to it.
And then there's like the Deadpool Beginnings, Deadpool by, again, Joe Kelly, like his main run, Deadpool by Daniel Way, and just a bunch of Deadpool omnibuses, because there was a lot of demand for them back when they, were first kicking these omnibuses out, and still are. There's still a big fan base for Deadpool, and we appreciate that. And the whole collection, to collected editions, and omnis are fun.
Back to that.
But to that.
When the movies come out, it's your cue to jump the comics and see what they're talking about.
Absolutely. And props to Ryan Reynolds. I guess he started out, he kind of heard some rumblings about this in 2005. And then it was when, Fox was really kicking it around, and he's like, hey, I want to get on this. And he actually helped like direct and produced like the first test footage for Deadpool before they shopped it around, and really got serious about the project with Tim Miller. And then and that's how like the infamous like Deadpool YouTube like test footage came about, and that's when people were like, wow, when can we get this?
Which is great.
It was like a YouTube phenomenon that was going around, so cool. And that's where you got to see like all the mask effects come around, where he's like talking with his mouth. Then they kind of took that, and then they made the movies. And now I'm so happy that Ryan Reynolds got Hugh Jackman to come back as Wolverine, even though he said he would never come back after Logan, which was honestly the best movie to go out on. But this, this is a fun movie, and we get to see maybe comic book like accurate Wolverine, or maybe another universe Wolverine. There's just a whole bunch of wacky stuff going on in this movie, and they're like, oh, anybody could cameo in this movie, anybody, and you're like, oh gosh. Well, we'll just have to find out and see what happens.
They're all in there. There's no barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though She-Hulk started originating with like the fourth wall, like Deadpool was probably more recognized with the fourth wall.
Yeah, I mean he definitely helped bring it in his comic.
Although that would be cool if She-Hulk fourth walled his movie and then he came back.
I don't know. We're going to have to see who shows up. They're going to show up.
Yep, absolutely. And kudos for the whole ride. It's been fun. And we had, what do you think about this collection of stories overall?
I thought it was a really good setup for people who have never heard anything about Deadpool. Right? Like, so just imagine someone who just saw the movie for the very first time and thought, oh, I want to learn more about this character. I think it's a really good setup for that, a good primer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's a starting point and you love these stories and you want to see where Deadpool goes, there's a ton of comics out there, so you got a lot to read.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be the hardest thing as a Deadpool fan is where do you start?
Yeah, and just kind of find all those little pieces. But yes, very excited for the movie to come out, but also just as excited because we're finally getting into characters that have some real development in them, and some characters that are just exciting on their own. Then they're not just like the same characters. Like they keep making movies with the same, and like let's break out and tell new stories with popular characters.
New stories with popular characters. That's what we're all about. And all the good collected editions and more to come. This has been another great episode of Fan Pal Comic Hour. This is your host, Andrew Honor.
Chris Ramos.
Signing off.